Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Daniel was at work when he received an unexpected message from Amanda. Can you meet me this afternoon, just the two of us? It's important. At a quiet cafe, and please don't say anything to Julia. He reread it surprised. It sounded unusual. Amanda had always been straightforward, but never secretive like this. The request for secrecy shook him. She had never been one to create mystery or drama. As strange as it was, he replied yes. They agreed to meet at a cafe outside of downtown where they were unlikely to run into anyone they knew. On the way, he tried to guess what could justify such a private meeting, but no hypothesis made sense. After all, it was Amanda. Amanda entered Daniel's life through Julia. The two met on their first day at work years ago, and from that moment on became inseparable. They sat next to each other by chance, but went out to lunch together as if they'd known each other for ages. Their friendship grew with impressive naturalness. Julia always said Amanda was her soul sister and spoke about her fondly in every conversation. When Daniel started dating Julia, Amanda was already part of the package, a guaranteed presence in stories on weekends in small traditions. Julia didn't take long to introduce them. She wanted the two most important people in her life to meet right away. And so they did. A simple dinner-light conversation, and Amanda quickly became part of the couple's routine. She was present for special occasions, accompanied them on trips, helped with party preparations, and made sure to be there for important moments. When Julia and Daniel decided to get married, there was no doubt Amanda would be the maid of honor, and not just because of tradition, but because it was impossible to imagine that day without her. Around the two of them, Amanda was the person who always brought lightness. She knew how to listen, had sincere opinions, and offered help even without being asked. She would show up with desserts, organize surprises, and liven up conversations. Daniel came to consider her family. It was common to see her on lazy Sundays sitting with Julia on the couch, chatting about a book or a new documentary. Sometimes the two would laugh about things no one else understood, and it always felt natural. Nothing forced, no barriers, no feeling that someone was taking up too much space. Amanda said she was single by choice, that her job demanded a lot, and that she was in a phase of life where she preferred to invest in friendships rather than meaningless relationships. Julia respected that and valued her friend's company even more. For Daniel, it was good to know that Julia had someone to share things with that he might not understand as easily. When he was swamped with commitments, Amanda was the one who showed up to keep Julia company, start conversations, or change the mood of the house. Her presence was seen as natural by everyone. Julia's parents liked her, so did the couple's friends. Amanda had this easy way of pleasing, of fitting in. She was smart, good-humored, and discreet. She never drew attention to herself, but was always missed when she wasn't around. Even in the wedding details, Amanda participated. She was the one who helped choose the catering, who accompanied Julia to visit vendors, who ensured everything went as planned. Julia trusted her blindly, and so did Daniel. It wasn't uncommon for Amanda to stay over when they watched movies late into the night. Julia said it was more practical. Amanda kept a toothbrush and a pair of pajamas in a drawer, and that was it. It was like having an older sister who showed up to bring comfort. Daniel thought it was beautiful. Their friendship was solid, without competition, without friction, something rare to see. And so, as he parked his car in front of the cafe, Daniel still had no idea what Amanda wanted to talk about. He only knew it was coming from someone he deeply respected, someone who was always present, who was part of everything, and who until that day had never given any reason for secrets. Daniel arrived a few minutes before the agreed time. He ordered a coffee, but didn't touch the cup. He was restless. The place was discreet, just as Amanda had suggested in her message. From the moment she requested secrecy and urgency, an odd feeling settled in his chest. Amanda had never behaved this way, and it was precisely because of that he accepted the meeting. She had always been balanced, always transparent. This sudden change in tone made him uncomfortable, but also curious. As much as his mind searched for an explanation, nothing seemed to justify such a private meeting and such a direct request for silence. When Amanda arrived, Daniel immediately noticed something was wrong. She was pale, with red eyes, as if she had been crying. She tried to force a smile, but it was visibly fake. She sat at the table without saying much. She looked at him for a few seconds, as if weighing her words. Daniel broke the ice by asking if everything was okay, but Amanda just shook her head, avoiding his gaze. It was strange to see her like that. Her, who was always so confident, so stable, now seemed on the verge of falling apart. Before he could say anything, Daniel's phone rang. It was Julia. He hesitated for a second, but answered. "Hi, love." Her response came dryly. "You're with Amanda, right?" He confirmed, not understanding the reason for the question. On the other end, silence. Julia took a deep breath and said with a firmness he wasn't used to hearing, Please leave now. Go, don't listen to what she has to say. The call ended shortly after. Daniel stayed frozen for a moment, processing it. He looked at Amanda, still unsure what to think. She noticed. She placed her hands on the table and spoke calmly. Please listen to me, that's all. I swear I won't take much of your time. Her tone wasn't that of someone trying to convince. It was of someone exhausted from carrying what she was about to say. Daniel, even without understanding anything, nodded silently. Amanda took a deep breath, as if gathering the courage to cross a point of no return. And then she said, for 2 years, I've been having an affair with Julia. The words came out dry without any preamble. Daniel let out a nervous laugh, thinking it was another one of those bad jokes Amanda sometimes made. But her face didn't change. She didn't back down, didn't smile, didn't try to explain. She only held his gaze steady, as if she knew exactly what she was doing there. Daniel fell silent. The air seemed heavier. He looked at her, trying to find some loophole, some sign that this was a misunderstanding, an exaggeration, an invention. But nothing. Amanda simply said she wanted to tell you, but she didn't have the courage, and I waited too long. But you deserve to know. He asked why. Why now? Why this way? She said she couldn't carry it on her shoulders anymore, that the secret had already swallowed whatever piece she had left, that the least he deserved was the truth. Daniel got up from the table without saying another word. Amanda didn't try to stop him. She just watched him as he walked away. In his head, everything was jumbled. The friendship, the trust, the marriage, the years built together. Suddenly, it all seemed like a carefully constructed lie. He didn't want to hear anything else. But at the same time, he had already heard enough to know that from that point on, his life would never be the same again. Daniel left the cafe in silence, as if every step were automatic. His mind was both empty and full at the same time. He opened the car door, and the moment he sat in the driver's seat, his phone rang again. It was Julia. He answered. Her voice came fast, without pauses, as if trying to prevent a breakdown. Amanda just called me. She told me she talked to you. We spoke. Daniel pressed his eyes shut and brought his hand to his forehead, as if trying to erase that reality for a few seconds. He took a deep breath, held it for a moment, and finally exhaled. Julia, we'll talk at home. And hung up. The way back felt longer than usual. Daniel didn't remember if the traffic light was green or red, if there was traffic, or if the radio was on. It was as if the road was just an interval between who he was before that morning and who he had just become. He parked in front of the house. He went inside. Julia was already there, sitting on the couch. She didn't seem surprised to see him. She watched him with a tired look, as if preparing for an inevitable impact. Daniel dropped his keys on the table and remained standing. The silence between them lasted longer than any conversation. Julia was the first to speak. She said it didn't make sense to hide anything anymore. She admitted it, confirmed everything. She didn't try to soften it or justify it. She just spoke. She said it was something she didn't know how it started, that there was no plan, that it just happened. And once it happened, they didn't know how to go back. Daniel interrupted her. He said Amanda had told him it had been going on for 2 years. Julia nodded. She tried to explain that what she felt was confusing, that her affection for him hadn't disappeared, that she still loved him, but in a different way, a way she herself couldn't explain. Daniel crossed his arms, trying to stay composed. She continued. She said there came a moment when she stopped trying to understand, that she felt something for Amanda that no longer fit within friendship, and that as much as she was afraid, she could never cut it off at the root. Julia cried as she spoke. She said he was a good man, that he had always treated her with respect, that he had built a stable life alongside her, that she had no complaints. But still something inside her had changed. What caught Daniel off guard was when she suggested an alternative, as if there were still space to rebuild something within the chaos. Julia looked him in the eye and said, I thought of a solution. Amanda could move in with us. We could try a different dynamic. There are couples who live like that. It could work. She spoke with hope, as if she believed they were facing a possible reinvention, as if loving two people the way she claimed to love was reason enough to create a new structure. Daniel stayed silent for a few seconds, absorbing it. He ran his hand over his face. He leaned against the wall as if he needed physical support to stay upright. When he finally responded, it was with a low but firm voice. He said what she was proposing wasn't a solution. It was a disguise to avoid facing the gravity of what had been done. That the love he felt wouldn't survive the idea of becoming the middle ground between two people who chose to lie for so long. That sharing a roof with Amanda wasn't rebuilding. It was a twisted continuation of a story he never wanted to be part of. He looked at Julia with sadness, but without anger. He said he respected everything they had lived through, that it had been real for him, that he had been happy, but that it was over. He asked for a divorce. There were no shouts, no arguments. Just the acceptance of an end, Julia cried in silence. She didn't beg, didn't try to convince him to stay. She just lowered her head and stayed there, hands clasped as if holding herself together. Daniel went to the bedroom, grabbed a backpack with some clothes, and left. He needed to breathe away from there. He needed to remember who he was before the lie. And above all, he needed to understand who he would be after it. Weeks passed as if everything were on autopilot. The divorce went through quickly without obstacles. Both signed the papers without fights, without attempts to reverse the inevitable. The house was sold soon after. It was too big for just one of them, and too full of memories for both. The furniture was divided with minimal conversation. Julia took the couch, some paintings, the set of plates she loved. Daniel kept the car, some clothes, whatever fit, in the small rented apartment he found in a few days. He didn't care about much. He just wanted to turn the page. Julia and Amanda moved in together. They chose a small apartment downtown, far from the old neighborhood, far from the streets where the three of them used to walk. They wanted distance from prying eyes, from questions. They wanted to try a new routine, just the two of them. Julia quit her old job. She told her colleagues she needed a fresh start. Amanda did the same. For a while, they seemed excited. They bought plants to decorate, posted photos of their new home, elaborate dishes cooked together, forced smiles with light captions. It was as if they were trying to prove something to others or to themselves. In the first few months, they seemed to move in sync. They had the freedom they said they desired, constant companionship, shared routines. But gradually, something began to change. The silences grew longer. Conversations became shallower. The lightness that existed when the relationship was hidden began to weigh heavily when everything was out in the open. Moments of complicity lost space to the discomfort that arose between them. Every gesture began to be analyzed more carefully. Small irritations appeared. Amanda demanded more presence. Julia wanted more space. The differences, once muffled by secrecy, now screamed. Some close friends noticed the strain. They commented among themselves that Amanda seemed tense and Julia apathetic. Visits became rare. The house, once full of life, turned into a closed-off place with curtains almost always shut and little movement. Social media went quiet. Messages exchanged with old friends dwindled. Once a former co-worker of Julia told Daniel via message that she had bumped into Amanda at a supermarket. She looked worn out, had deep dark circles, and avoided conversation. Julia, on the other hand, had declined an invitation to reconnect with old friends. She said she was focused on getting her life back on track. What began as an intense relationship outside the norm, fueled by desire and urgency, slowly lost strength. What remained was a daily life without support, marked by unspoken regrets. They didn't fight. There was no public breakup, no accusations, just the silent distancing of two people who realized that living in hiding is different from building a life under the light of day. And in that difference, the passion that once seemed so strong dissolved. One day, Amanda left with a suitcase. She left a short note on the table. Julia didn't call. She didn't chase after her. She just read it, folded the paper, and put it in a drawer, and stayed there. That relationship, which seemed so indestructible, ended the same way it began, unexpectedly, without warning. Without shouts, without goodbyes. All that was left were confused memories of a time that now hurt to recall. What had been freedom turned into demands. What seemed like love revealed itself as haste. Each went their separate ways, trying to gather their own broken pieces. And in the end, everything they built was based on a choice that demanded too much and sustained too little. Daniel moved forward, but it wasn't overnight. The end of the marriage left marks, doubts, and a sense of exhaustion that seemed stuck to his skin. During the first few months, he avoided talking about it, declined invitations to events, and preferred solitude. Not as an escape, but as a way to understand where he ended and where everything that remained began. He quietly reorganized his life without making a fuss. He started going for walks on Saturday mornings, picked up reading books forgotten on the shelf, exchanged messages with an old college friend, and visited his parents more often. Small gestures that reconnected him with himself. Work, leisure, and free time took on new meaning. He began discovering new habits and realized he felt lighter. He also realized he didn't need to prove anything to anyone. What he lived with Julia was part of his story, but it no longer defined who he was. The wounds left scars, but over time those scars stopped hurting. He began allowing himself to meet other people. At first, everything seemed superficial. Forced conversations, awkward meetings. Until months later, he met Brooke during a lecture on innovation in the corporate sector. She was a university professor invited to speak about human behavior in leadership decisions. Their first conversation happened by chance during a break at the event after a question he asked from the audience. Brooke responded with clarity and a gentle smile. Later, they ended up sitting at the same table during the coffee break. They talked about careers, books, choices. Daniel didn't notice time passing. When the event ended, she sought him out to thank him for the conversation. He invited her for coffee, and she accepted. From there, their meetings became frequent but unhurried. It was different from anything he had experienced before. Brooke didn't make promises or create exaggerated expectations. She simply let things unfold. Daniel shared his story calmly, without dramatizing but also without hiding anything. He talked about the marriage, the separation, and how he had changed in recent times. Brooke listened without interrupting. She didn't judge, didn't act surprised. She simply said that all people have parts that have been broken, and the most beautiful thing is when we learn to put ourselves back together without hiding the cracks. That phrase stayed in Daniel's mind for days. He realized he no longer needed to pretend to be whole. Brooke saw him exactly as he was, with everything he had lived through. Over time, their relationship grew stronger. 2 years later, they moved to a new city together, seeking a quieter life away from the frantic pace they both carried before. They married in a simple ceremony on a late afternoon with few guests, but everyone who truly mattered. Daniel didn't give long speeches. He simply thanked her for finding someone who embraced him at a time when he needed to rediscover himself the most. 2 years after the wedding, their first child was born, a boy who brought a new perspective to everything. Later, their second child was born. Having kids changed the rhythm of things, but not the kind of love they shared. Brooke was a loving, present mother and naturally shared responsibilities with him. Daniel proved to be an affectionate, patient father involved in every detail of raising the children. Sleepless nights, diaper changes, visits to the pediatrician, everything was shared. Never with complaints, always with dedication. Some people from the past reached out over time, including colleagues who had followed from afar what had happened with Julia and Amanda. They commented in a tone of surprise that Julia seemed like a different person, more distant, less approachable. Daniel didn't react with sarcasm or superiority. He simply listened and continued the conversation. That part of the story no longer had a place in the new life he had built. Today, as he holds his children in his arms, Daniel understands that love doesn't need to be turbulent to be real. That trust is more than the absence of lies. It's the feeling of security beside someone. That loyalty isn't about being there on the good days, but about supporting the other, even when everything seems to be falling apart. That starting over may seem impossible, but becomes inevitable when pain transforms into learning. He discovered it's possible to be happy again, and not by luck, but by choice. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.